And then I'm going to share MATLAB real quick. All right, so you're on the first one wants us to graph the equation by plotting points. So let me get what they're writing. 6y plus 3x equals 3. So we'll go figure it out, and then we'll come back and plot our 2 points, okay? So on number one, when we graph it, it's going to use a 2-point line tool for this equation. So y'all, I'm just going to solve this for y, and then once you got it solved for y, you can use the calculator or you can find your own points, okay? So if you're going to solve this for y, you got to move the 3x to the other side. So we're going to subtract 3x from both sides. So that brings down my 6y. That cancels out on that left side. On the right side, those are not like terms. So 3's and x's don't add. But what I'm going to do is just put my negative 3x first, and then I'll bring down my positive 3. Okay, so now you want that 6y to be a 1y, so we're going to divide everybody by 6. So remember, when you're doing division, every single term has to be divided. All right, so 6 divided by 6 gives me 1y. Negative 3 over 6 does not divide, but we can reduce this because both of these will divide by 3. So 3 divided by 3 will make that a 1 on top. 6 divided by 3 makes that a 2 on bottom. So that reduces to a negative 1/2 x plus, and that's the same thing, so that's going to end up being a 1/2. All righty, so I would have to choose two x values, so I'll do 0. 0 times negative 1/2 is 0, and 0 plus 1/2 will give me 1/2. And then if I put a 1 in for the x, negative 1/2 times 1 is a negative 1/2, and that negative 1/2 plus a positive 1/2 would give me 0. Now, y'all, so let me show you how to put that y equals negative 1/2 x plus 1/2 into your calculator, because you can do that to get your 2 points. So you would go to y equals, and let me clear everything off here. All right, and I had negative 1/2, so I'm gonna make that look like a fraction by hitting alpha, y equals, and enter. And then I'll put my 1 on top, 2 on bottom, arrow right, and put my x. And then that was plus a positive 1/2. So I'm gonna hit that green button, alpha, y equals again, and enter, and then put a 1/2 there. Alrighty, y'all. So now, since I've got it all put in here, I can hit the blue second button, graph, for my table. And y'all, there's some of my points. So I had 0, 1/2, and then there's my 1, 0. Now, if you didn't want fractions, you could do 1, 0, and then you could come down here and do 3, negative 1. So I would do 1, 0, 3, negative 1 on there if you wanted easier points to do, okay? All right, y'all, so let's go plot this one, and then we can move to the next one. All right, so you click the enlarge graph. We're going to use the 2-point line tool. So I had 0, 1/2. So if you watch the yellow marker, I'm on 0, and I'm going to go up to 1/2. That'll be 0.5 for 1/2. I'm going to click that point. And then my second point was right to 1, 0. Click that one. But y'all, don't matter what 2 points you plot, okay? Just plot 2 points and then you're ready to go. All right, y'all, so the second one, I got y equals x cubed minus 2. Okay, so let me tell you about this graph. X cubed graphs. They're going to make the squiggly 4-point cubic tool. So for number 2, you got to find 4 points, okay? Now, since these are cubes, my 3 points, I'm going to do 0, 1, 2, and -1. So y'all, these are the best 4 numbers to use on your cubic every time. Because if you put a 3 in here, 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. Minus 2 would give you 25. That's a big Y value, okay? So let me use my numbers. 0 cubed. 0 times 0 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 2 gives me a -2. If I put a 1 in here, 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 1 minus 2 is -1. And if I put a 2 in there, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. 8 minus 2 would give me 6. And y'all, let me put a -1 in here. -1 times -1 times -1 is a -1. And -1 minus 2 is a -3. All right, so once again, you can also use the calculator. So let's go to that calculator. And let me go to y equals and clear all this off. All right, so if you're using a calculator, that's an x cubed. So hit your x and use this upside down V to put in your exponent of a cube. Then arrow right and come down. And then put in a -2. So now I got x cubed minus 2. So if you want points, you can go to second graph for the table. So y'all, and then let's see, I went up to, I did -1. So -1, -3. I had 0, -2, 1, -1, and 2, 6. So, and you could go up there, -2, -10 wouldn't even been too bad if you wanted it, okay? So let's look at our graph before we go to Math Lab. So we're going to have a little squiggly uphill graph going to the right, okay? So let's go to Math Lab and plot them 4 points. So click the enlarge graph. On the second row, I'm going to use the 4-point cubic tool and start putting my points. I had 0 and down to -2. Okay, I had 1, -1. I had 2, 6. And then finally, I had a -1, -3. Now be careful on this and see how, as I move, it's changing by 0.5 every time, okay? So make sure you actually go down to -1, -3 and put that last dot. So now I got my little curvy graph going uphill to the right like we needed, okay? All right, let me see. Let's hit next. All right, so number 3, they're giving you your formula. F of C equals 9/5 times C plus 32. So this is Fahrenheit temperature given the Celsius temperature. So they're giving me -15 degrees Celsius, and they want me to pick the Fahrenheit temperature that would go with that. All right, y'all, so we got to figure out A, B, C, or D on this. All right, so let's go. All we're going to do is what? Put our -15 in for the C. So we're finding F of a -15. That's going to equal 9/5 times -15 plus 32. All right, so let me show you how I would put that in on a calculator if you wanted to. On a calculator, I would put it in just like it looks. So I got 9/5. So I'm going to do green button, and then the y equals to get my fraction. 9/5 will be 9 on top, 5 on bottom, L right. And then I had my -15 in parentheses, and then plus 32. All right, y'all, so let's hit enter, and we're looking for an answer of 5. So -15 degrees Celsius is equal to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So y'all, let's see, do we got a 5 on there? Yeah, that would be our B. So click B, and then we go to the next. And let me see if y'all remember this. Is this correspondence a function? Yes or no? And remember, if it's going to be a function, the domain can only point to one range value. So y'all are saying yes, yes, yes. And y'all, let's see, the 1 only points to 16, 13 only points to 6, 18 only points to 16. So y'all, that is definitely a yes. Good job. All right, now what we're going to do on these, I think there's 2 or 3 now in a row. So what we got to do on these is fill out the table before we actually graph them. So it's going back to the graphs, but they're giving you the X values they want you to use, okay? So this one's giving me a -2, 0, and 2. So once I figure out what these points equal, then we'll graph a point, okay? Oh yeah, now the thing on this, -4x plus 5, this is going to be a 2-point line tool. So we only got to plot 2 of these points, okay? We do not have to plot all 3 of them. They just give you extra points so that if you're doing it all by hand, if all 3 of the points were in a line, you know you would have the right answer, okay? So they just give you 3 so you can check your answer by hand. All right, y'all, so let's put a -2 in here. -4 times -2 is a +8. 8 plus 5 is 13. All right, then I put a 0 in for the x. -4 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 5 is 5. And then if I put a 2 in here, -4 times 2 is -8. -8 plus 5 is a -3. Okay? But y'all remember, you can go to y equals and plot that -4x plus 5 and use the table. And you could use the table to fill out these values, right? So we could go to that calculator, go to y equals, clear that. I could put in the -4 times x plus 5. Then I could go to second graph for my table. And right here, I could have put, there's my 13 from -2. Then I can come down here to 0, and there's my 5. And then they did a +2, and then there's my -3. So y'all, either way, and let's look at the graph and what it's going to look like. So it's going to be a line going downhill when we're done, okay? All right, y'all, so I'm going to click the enlarge graph. Oh, now, let me say first, you have to actually put your numbers in here. So -2 was 13. 0, I had a 5. And then at +2, we had a -3. So you'd have to put those in first and then graph this, okay? So 2-point line tool on this one. Now me, I'm going to plot 0, 5. So there's 0, up 5. And then I'm going to do right 2 and down 3. So those 2 points were easier to me than doing that negative 213. But like I said, y'all, whatever two of the 3 points you want to apply, that's all you needed, okay? So then we'll save this and then hit next. All right, this one is an absolute value f of x equals -5 plus absolute value of x. So let me see what they're giving me for these points. -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. So they want me to find all the y values or the f of x values and then plot this graph. Now, y'all, this graph, um, let me say this. When I graph this one, absolute value is a 2-point absolute value tool. So a 2-point absolute value. But the trick on this one, we got to plot this V point first. And that is always going to be the middle point here. So the middle point gets plotted first, okay? Once we plot the middle point, we can plot either one of the other 4 points for the second one. But you gotta plot the middle point first because that's what's going to give us this V shape here, okay? And then when you're actually graphing it, MATLAB will say that, okay? So here, if I put a -2 in here, absolute value of -2 is 2. So then I got -5 plus 2, which is a -3. If I put a -1 in, absolute value of -1 is 1. -5 plus 1 gives me a -4. If I put a 0 in here, absolute value of 0 is 0. -5 plus 0 is -5. All right, let me put a 1 in. Absolute value 1 is 1. -5 plus 1 is -4. So see, the -1 and 1 both had the same y value. So let's put a 2 in. Absolute value of 2 is 2. -5 plus 2 is -3. So these graphs are symmetric. The -2 and +2 had the same value. -1 and 1 had the same value, okay? All right, so when I graph it, like I said, the middle point will be my first one, okay? Now, if you're doing it on the calculator, let's clear off our y equals. So I had -5 plus absolute value. Remember, absolute value, you hit math, arrow right and highlight number, and it's the first option, number 1. So hit enter on that, and then put your X inside. So if you wanted the table again, you'd hit second graph. And y'all, there's my values. -2 gave me -3, -1, -4, and so far, okay? Now I want to see the graph, so I'm going to hit graph. And it's going to be a V-shaped graph, and it looks like it comes down a little bit below the x-axis there. So let's go graph it. So let me put in my values first. So I had a -3. I had a -4. I had a -5. And then I had a -4. And then a -3. All right, click the enlarge graph. We're going to go to the top right and grab the absolute value tool. Now watch that yellow banner there. When I click on that, it says plot the vertex. That's that middle point we had, that 0, -5. So I'm going to go here to 0 and down to -5. There's my vertex point. Now I can grab any other point I want to. So I'm going to do the -2, -3. So come left to -2 and then down to -3. That'd be my second point. Y'all, that little V-shaped graph looks exactly like what we had on our calculator, okay? So plot that one, then you're going to hit next. All right, y'all, I think this is the last we got a graph, so let me think. F of x equals negative x squared minus 8. So the x's on this one, they're giving me negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. All righty, so on this one, we're going to do the same thing. We'll figure out our table, and then we'll graph it. That's the x squared graph. So when we graph it, we're going to use the 3-point x squared tool. So they might call it a 3-point quadratic or x squared tool, okay? But it's going to look like the U shape. Now, this problem gives people fits, especially with these two negative numbers. So let me work them two by hand. So let me do f of negative 2 first. I'm going to put a negative 2 in for the x. Now, y'all, this negative right here is always in the formula. So bring down that negative and then put your negative 2 in for the x, square that, and then minus the 8. Now, you cannot multiply the two negatives yet because the exponent has priority and the exponent is squaring that negative 2. So this negative comes down first. Then you're going to do negative 2 times negative 2, which makes that a 4. And then at the end is a minus 8. So with this negative here, you really got, since this one's being squared, you really got 3 negatives here, and it's going to keep that negative, okay? And then negative 4 minus 8 is negative 12. Same thing with the negative 1. You're going to have that negative, and then negative 1 squared minus 8. So bring down that negative. Right here, negative 1 times negative 1 is a positive 1. Bring down that negative 8. And negative 1 minus 8 is negative 9. All right, y'all, we put a 0 in here. 0 squared is 0 times a negative is 0. So I get 0 minus 8, which is a negative 8. And watch this with the 1 in here. If I put in this 1, I got that negative times my 1 squared minus 8. Well, y'all, 1 squared, after I bring this negative down, 1 squared is 1 times 1 is 1. So I get a negative 1 minus 8, which is a negative 9. So see what's happening? The negative 1 and the 1 gave me the same answers. So let's put in our 2. I got the negative times 2 squared minus 8. If you notice, these graphs are symmetric also. So I should get a negative 12 here. So let's see. Bring that negative down. Here, 2 times 2 is 4. So that's going to make that a negative 4 minus 8, which is negative 12. Okay, so either way, just remember, these graphs are symmetric because when you square a negative, it's the same thing as squaring a positive number, okay? Like signs are always positive on that. And then you had that negative out front, so that's keeping them all negative over here. All right, so you know you got your calculator also. So you can go to y equals, clear that off. All right, we had a negative x squared minus 8. So let me go to my table, second graph for the table. You know, there's our numbers. We had negative 2, negative 12, negative 1, negative 9, 0, negative 8, and so forth. So let's see what the graph will look like when we're done by hitting graphs. So y'all, it's an upside down U, and it's pretty low down on our graph, okay? So let's go to MathLab and graph that. All right, so we got to put in all of our numbers. So we had negative 12, -9, -8, and then we had -9 again, and then finally -12. So put in all them values, click the enlarge graph. Now this one's not as picky, so when you hit the U-shaped, it don't say what points to plot. You can plot any three of them. So I can do -2, -12. I can do my -1, -9. All right, so that's -1, -9. And then I had 0, -8. So there's my 0, -8. So there it is. It's a little bit far down on that. Now, it don't look as far down as it did on the calculator because this one's going to 20 in each direction. My calculator was just going to 10, okay? But y'all, that's the same graph, so hit save, and then we hit next. All right, let's see. Let me make this one a little bigger. Is that a function? Does it pass the vertical line test? And remember, the vertical line said if a vertical line can intersect my graph more than once, it's not a function. And so, Julie, you're saying a no. And guess what? That is a no. Because, y'all, if you run vertical lines down to it from top to bottom, a lot of that graph gets intersected twice, which makes that a no, okay? So let me go to the pad real quick. So that one was sort of like this, I think. And that's what you got to remember. If you can do a vertical line down through there and it intersects it here and here, it intersects it more than once, anywhere you go, that's causing this to be a no, okay? So remember, it cannot intersect it more than one time. All right, y'all, so then we would hit next on that. All right, y'all, this one wants the domain. So the domain, we got 1 over 9 minus 2x. So remember, on the domain, I'm going to take the bottom of the fraction, which is that 9 minus 2x, and I'm going to set it equal to 0. Once I solve this, I got whatever numbers I need to kick out of my domain, okay? So we're only worried about our fractions, and we're only worried about that denominator, okay? Because the denominator of a fraction cannot equal 0. So to solve this, pull that 9 over by subtracting. Well, that cancels. I got -2x equals a -9. And then divide both sides by -2. So that -2 divided by -2 makes that a positive 1x now. And then that -9 divided by -2, the negatives cancel, and that's just going to stay a 9 halves. This one will not reduce because 2 and 9 can't divide by any numbers that are the same. So in our domain, it'll be x such that x is real number and x cannot equal our 9 halves. So we're going to go look for the one that says cannot equal 9 halves. Now be careful. One of these has a greater than on it. We don't care about that one. Looks like we need B right here, right? B has the not equals. Um, and that's the only one we needed. So then we would click next. All right, so this is 10. They're giving me f of x equals a negative 4x plus 4. G of x equals x squared plus 8. They want me to find f of 5 plus g of 5. So we're just going to put 5s in for both the x's, it looks like. Okay? So f of 5 plus g of 5 is like f plus g of 5. It's going to equal my f plus my g. So for f, I got negative 4 times x, which is 5, and then plus 4. For g, I'm going to have 5 squared plus 8. And y'all, the trick is to do inside each parentheses until you can't do nothing else inside of each parenthesis, then add them, okay? So in my first parentheses, negative 4 times 5 gives me a negative 20 plus my 4. Here, 5 squared is 25 plus my 8. All right, y'all. In here, negative 20 plus 4 gives you negative 16 plus 25 plus 8 on this one gives you 33. Now, there's nothing else I could have done in the parentheses. I got single numbers. So now let's just add these single numbers. Negative 16 and 33 give me a positive 17. So that one is mainly just an order of operations type problem, okay? So on that one, you would just come in and put your 17 and move to the next one. All right, y'all, same thing here, except it's going to do a little bit of division. F of x equals negative 18x plus 7. G of x is a x squared plus 12. They want me to find f of negative 10 divided by g of a negative 10. So we're going to go do a little bit of division. So we're doing f divided by g of a negative 10. So I'm going to put my f on top, negative 18 times negative 10 plus 7. So that's my f of x. On bottom is my g of x. So that's going to be a negative 10 squared plus 12. All right, so at this point by hand, negative 18 and negative 10 give me a positive 180 plus my 7. On bottom, negative 10 squared, negative times negative is a positive 100 plus my 12. All right, let's see what I get. 180 plus 7 is 187. 100 plus 12 is 112. So look, this one's a little tricky to see if it simplifies. So let me show you a trick. I'm going to go to my calculator. I'm going to clear this off. So let me make it look like a fraction. Second, y equals, and enter. So y'all on top I had negative 18 times that negative 10 plus 7. So that was my top. On bottom, I had my negative 10 in parentheses and square that. Always put a negative number in parentheses when you're squaring it, okay? And then it had a plus 12. All right, y'all, so let me hit enter. And look, there's my final answer, 187 over 112, which means it does not simplify. Because y'all, the calculator would simplify it down if it did, okay? So that's just going to stay at 187 over 112 when we go plug it in. So when we hit the blank, let's see, there's a fraction bar down here. I got 187. And then on the bottom, I had 112. All right, y'all, then I would hit next. All right, so 12 f of x equals negative 2x plus 2. G of x is an x squared plus 3. They want me to find f plus g of x. So this time they're not giving me any numbers to put in. So all we can do is simplify this, okay? So let's go to our pad. All right, so f plus g of x will equal my f plus my g. F is negative 2x plus 2. G is an x squared plus 3. So remember, anytime you're adding like this, we can drop the parentheses and bring everything out. So I got negative 2x plus 2 plus my x squared plus 3. And y'all, if you notice what, the only thing I can do is add those like terms, which is the 2 and the 3. But before I add them, I'm going to put this thing in descending order. So I want my x squared first. Then I want that negative 2x. Then I'm going to add the like terms, and 2 plus 3 give us a 5. So we won't put this now into the answer since they didn't give me no numbers here, okay? So let's see, that one was x squared. So hit the x and then come down here and hit the superscript and put in your 2, arrow right, and put in minus 2x, and then put in your plus 5. All right, y'all, then you would hit next. All right, so this one's subtraction. So let's see. F of x is going to equal negative 3x plus 2. G of x equals x squared minus 2. Look what they want me to find. They want me to find g minus f of x. So they didn't give us a number on this one either, okay? Now, I get a few of y'all on this one because of the subtraction. So y'all, let's see what we got to do. G minus f of x will equal my g minus my f, okay? G was x squared minus 2. F is a negative 3x plus 2. All right, so remember, subtraction, you got to multiply that negative times both numbers inside the parentheses. So the first one comes down, x squared minus 2. You never have to change nothing on the first one. But y'all look here. A negative times a negative makes that a positive 3x. And then a negative times a positive makes that a negative 2. The biggest mistakes I get on this one are right here on these signs, okay? All right, y'all, let's put them in order. X squared first. The positive 3x next. And now look here. A negative 2 plus a negative 2. Those don't cancel because they're both negative. And a negative 2 and a negative 2 is a negative 4. Remember, when you add two negatives, it stays negative, okay? Two negatives do not make a positive when you're adding, okay? That's only for multiplying and subtracting. So just remember, when you add two negatives, they will stay negative. So y'all, let's see, they're going to make us put that in here. So x squared plus 3x and then minus 4. All right, so you got that one in. You're going to hit next. All right, y'all. So this 14 is domain. And remember, all three of these will have the same domain. So what I got to figure out, let's see, we got f of x equals 1 over x minus 10. G of x equals 2x cubed. So y'all, it's like this. First they wanted me to do the sum. So the sum is f plus g of x. So I'm going to take my f and add to my g. Well, f is a 1 over x minus 10. G is a 2x cubed. Let me ask y'all this. If you were to add these two functions, would there be any numbers we would have to exclude from my domain? Okay, so let me refresh y'all on this. Remember, I'm doing a domain. So since I'm doing a domain of these two functions here, when they're adding, my question was, are there any numbers that I would have to exclude from the domain if I was going to add these? Now remember, there definitely is, Claire. Oh, good. Not a negative 10, but a positive 10. There you go. Because remember, 10 minus 10 would make this undefined right here, right? So since 10 minus 10 makes it undefined, your domain would be x such that x is a real number and x cannot equal a positive 10. And that's the only number you could exclude because this one don't have a fraction. So we're only worried about this one little spot right here. Okay. Now, if that's what you got on the sum, when you subtract these, all you're doing is changing that from a plus to a subtraction. So it's still going to be the only number you're going to exclude is 10. And then if I was going to multiply these, all I would do is change that into multiplication. And I still got the same fraction. So I'm only going to exclude that 10. So for all three of these on this problem, they're all going to be the same answer. A, x is a real number and x, go down here and get that cannot equal and put in your 10. Then come down to the next one. A, x is a real number and x cannot equal positive 10. And then come down to the third one for the product. Click A, x is a real number and x, come down here and get that not equals on the bar, and then 10. All three of those will always have the same answer, okay? And it's going to be whatever number makes your fraction equal 0 in that denominator, okay? All right, y'all, let's see what we got next. So, we started getting into the systems of equations. X plus y plus z equals 1. 2x plus 5y plus 2z equals negative 13. Negative x plus 9y minus 3z equals a negative 51. All right, so we know we can do these on the calculator. I'll knock these out on the calculator in a second. Let me ask y'all this. Anybody doing these by hand? Because if you're doing these by hand, I'll knock these out by hand too, okay? And so y'all like to check them by hand, so good job. All righty, y'all. So I got them wrote down, so let's go play with this thing. All right, x plus y plus z equals 1, 2x plus 5y plus 2z equals negative 13. Negative x plus 9y minus 3z equals negative 51. So the question of the day, what variable do y'all want me to eliminate? Ooh, and one of them looks fairly easy, don't it? That's what I was going to say, Jesselyn. Looks like the x's are the easiest. So I'm going to eliminate x. So x will be my first one to eliminate. So remember, here's row 1, row 2, and row 3. So first I'm going to add 1 and 3 because that x and negative x will cancel out. So I'm going to add 1 and 3 first. So x plus y plus z equals 1. And this one was a negative x plus 9y minus 3z equaled a negative 51. So those, see the x's canceled out. So 1y and 9y gave me 10y. 1z minus 3z gave me negative 2z. And a 1 and negative 51 give me a negative 50. So now I got y and z left for this one. So now remember, this time you got to use the second equation with one of the other two to eliminate the x's. I'm going to use this one since it's negative. But y'all, if I'm going to add these two rows, I'm going to have to multiply row 3 by what? Oh, watch out, Justin, because remember, I'm adding it to a 2x right here. So I got a 2x here, and this is a negative x. So remember, if you want to cancel a 2x, this one has to equal negative 2x also. So this whole row, I got to multiply by 2. Okay? So I'm going to add 2 and 3 after changing 3. Okay, so I'm changing 3 by multiplying by 2. So 2 times negative x will give you negative 2x and so on, okay? So I'm not changing 2, so that's going to stay 2x plus 5y plus 2z equals negative 13. Now, this row 3, I'm going to multiply by 2, so I get negative 2x. 2 times 9 is 18y. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6z. 2 times negative 51 is a negative 102. Because y'all look here, the x's cancel again. 5 and 18 give me 23y. 2 minus 6 give me negative 4z. And then negative 13 and negative 102 give me a negative 115. So those now will make my next system of equations. Alrighty, y'all. So I will say now we got to figure out, do we want to eliminate the y or the z? And one of these, once again, is really easier than the other one. So what are we going to eliminate next? Oh, you better get off that one, Jesse. Now remember, if you're going to eliminate these y's, you would have to multiply this whole row by 10 and this whole row by 23 because those are got some crazy numbers here. So let's do this the easier way. Let's eliminate the z. Because look here, you got a -2 and a -4. If I want to eliminate the z, what can I multiply this row by to make that -2 into a +4? I would multiply this whole row by a -2, right? There you go. So -2 times 10 would be -20y. -2 times -2 would be a +4z. And then -2 times -50 would be a +100. Bring this row down, 23y minus 4z equaled -115. All right, y'all. -20 and 23 give you 3y. The z's cancel. 100, -115 give you -15. So look at that. I've got it now to where I'm down to one variable. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3, and I know what my y equals. So that cancels, and y is now -15 divided by 3 is a -5. So since I know what my y is, I'm going to plug it into this one. Because remember, I could either choose this one or this one and solve for the z. So this one looks a little bit easier to me. So I'm just going to back substitute. And I'm going to do 10 times y, which is -5, minus 2z has to equal -50. But y'all, like I said, it could either be this one or this one. Okay? All right, y'all, let's see. 10 and -5 give you -50 minus 2z equals -50. So to solve this one, I would add 50 to both sides. Oh, y'all, look at that. That cancels -2z. Ooh, look at that. -50 and 50 is a 0. And if I divide both sides by -2, well, that cancels, giving me z. And look at that. 0 divided by -2 is 0. So I know my y is -5. My z is 0. So I'm going to back substitute one more time into, I'm going to do this one. X plus y plus z equals 1. I don't know my x, but I know my y was -5. I know my z was 0. And all of that has to equal 1. So if you add like terms, you get x minus 5 equals 1. To solve this, I would add 5 to both sides and get x equals a 6. So 6 and -5 is 1 plus 0 is 1. So this works out. So remember in MATLAB, you would put a 6, -5, and 0. All right, y'all. So what I'm going to do, let me show you on the calculator just one more time. So for my calculator, I'm going to clear everything out. So on the calculator, I would go to second, x -1 for my matrix, arrow right, and hit edit and enter. It's a 3 enter by 4 enter. And then you're just putting your numbers. 1 enter, 1 enter, 1 enter for 1x, 1y, 1z equaled 1 enter. The next row I had 2 x's, so 2 enter. 5y would be 5 enter. 2z would be 2 enter. And then that equaled -13 enter. My last row I had -1 for the x enter. 9 for the y enter. -3 for the Z, enter, and that one equals -51, enter. All my numbers are in there, so I'm going to quit the screen by hitting second mode. Now I'm going to hit second x-1 for matrix again. I'm going to arrow right to math. And y'all, at this point, we're going to go down until we find RREF. So RREF is B on mine, so hit enter. Now, go get the matrix. Second, x-1, and it's always going to be the A one that I always put mine in, so I just hit enter at that point. I'm now going to reduce the matrix I just put in, and y'all, the right side is your three answers in alphabetical order. The 6 is your X, the -5 is your Y, and the 0 is your Z. So that last column is always your answer in alphabetical order, going from top to bottom. So really, that's what MathLab wants now is a 6, a -5, and then a 0. All right, y'all. So after that, you get to hit next. All right, y'all. So let me click this and y'all tell me what your answer is. They want you to translate this sentence. The first number is 50 more than the sum of the other two numbers. So let me write that. The first number is 50 more than the sum of the other two numbers. So y'all's will be really similar to mine. So let me show you what they're doing on this. Um, so they just want you to be able to read this. So technically, I don't know that first number, so I'm going to let that be X. So X is equals 50 more than the sum of the other two numbers. So you're adding 50 to whatever these two numbers mean by sum. So sum means you're adding them. So I don't know those two numbers. So that'll be Y plus Z. And then 50 more would be plus 50. So y'all's will be similar to this. So just write it out as you got it. Your first number, and then is your equals always, okay? That always means equals. More than means you're adding, and sum means you're adding, okay? All right, now, you noticed none of the answers had it like this because what we got to do is get all the variables on this side. So if you're going to move the y to the other side, you would make it negative, right? You're subtracting y. And if you're going to move the z, you would make it negative on this side and move it to that side. So if it's positive on one side, it becomes negative on the other. So that'll cancel, that'll cancel. So these are not like terms, so I'm just going to make it x minus y minus z. Only thing on the right side left now is the 50, okay? So you just sort of got to work it a little bit to get everything on one side equal to the number. So y'all, that's what I'm looking for when I hit this arrow down now. So x minus y minus z would equal 50 would be the second one for me, okay? All right, y'all, let me ask y'all a question. What number is this? This is 17. So we got four more to go. So do y'all just want to work through these four and be done? Or do y'all need a break? So everybody wants to work through. Okay, so let's work through these and be done, okay? All right, y'all. So this is another tricky one. So let's see what they're giving us. In triangle ABC, the measure of angle B is 8 more than 3 times A. Then it says the measure of angle C is 37 more than A. Then they want me to find the measure of each angle. Okay, so I got the highlights they wanted. So let's go work this. First, you had to come up with, since you got an ABC, remember you got an ABC. So 3 variables means we need 3 equations. They only gave me 2. So do y'all remember the third equation on this one with the triangles? So y'all, let me ask y'all. So when I was looking for, they gave me 2 equations. I need my third one. So what do y'all know about these 3 angles on a triangle? They equal 180. Good job. So we know that A plus B plus C equals 180. Now this one, so B is 8 more. So that means B equals 8 more than 3 times A. So that'll be 3A plus 8. So remember, I need to get the A's to the other side. So I would subtract 3A. So that one would give me negative 3A plus my B is going to equal 8. And then this one said C is 37 more. So C equals A plus 37. All right, so that one I need to move the A over by subtracting. So that is going to give me a negative A. There's no B, but it's got a plus C. And that one will equal 37. So you got to get them 3 equations in order, okay? Put all the A's in one column, B's in a column, and the C's in a column. Now, when I do this by hand, there's not a C here. You would put a 0 in the calculator. And then here for that B, you would put a 0 in the calculator. All right, y'all. So row 1, 2, and 3. So let me show y'all a trick on this one. I'm either going to eliminate the C since this one don't have it, or a B since this one don't have a B. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to eliminate the B. So what I can do, I can add these 2 rows together and eliminate the B. This one automatically becomes the second equation because it already doesn't have a B on it, okay? All right, so if I'm going to eliminate the B, I'm going to make one of these negative. So I'm going to multiply this second equation here by negative 1. So I'm going to leave the first one the same. So I'm going to add first equation and second equation after changing the second. So that one's going to stay A plus B plus C equals 180. I'm going to multiply this whole row by negative 1. So that's going to make that a positive 3A. Negative times positive will make that a negative B. And then negative times positive makes that a negative 8. So y'all see what I got now? Um, A and 3A gives me 4A. The B's cancel. I got a plus C. And then 180 minus 8 is 172. So that's going to be one equation. Now notice, this one does not have a B in it at all. It's going to become my second equation. Negative A plus C equals 37. So if you'd have got rid of the C or the B, you could have used the other one as the second, okay? All right, so here I'm going to eliminate. Oh, let's see what I'm going to eliminate. I guess I'll eliminate the A. So to eliminate the A, I'm going to multiply this row by 4. So that gives me a negative 4A with that positive A, okay? So I'm going to bring down the top equation. Multiply this whole row by 4, I get a negative 4A. 4 times 1 is a 4C. 4 times 37. Oh, let me hit that real quick. What I say, 4 times 37? That's 148. All right, y'all look, the A's cancel. 1 and 4 give me 5C. 148 and 172 give me 320. Now, when I divide by 5, I will know what my angle C equals. That cancels, and 320 divided by 5 means my C equals 64 degrees. So y'all, what that means, since I know what C equals, I can come in here, put a 64 for C, solve it for A. So let me do that and back substitute. So I get negative A plus C, which was 64. That's going to equal 37. So I'm going to subtract 64. I get negative A equals, so y'all, let's see what I got. 37 minus 64 is a negative 27. Divide both sides by negative 1. And A equals a positive 27. So if A is 27, C is 64, you can take this 180 minus the 27 minus the 64, and that's going to equal your angle B. So y'all, let's see what we get. 180 minus 27 minus 64. And that gives me an angle of 89 degrees. So y'all, this one's not bad. You just got to figure out what variable you want to kick out and how you want to solve that, okay? So let's do it by matrix real quick. So second, x negative 1, edit, enter. It's a 3 by 4 still. So this one had x plus y plus z equaled 180. You had negative 3a plus 1b, 0c equaled 8. Then on the last row, I had negative 1a, 0b, 1c equaled 37. And enter. All right, y'all, so all my numbers in, I would hit second mode to quit. Second, x negative 1, go to math, and then arrow down to RREF. Enter, and then go get that matrix. Second, x negative 1, and enter. All right, y'all. So we're looking for, what was it, 27? Whoops. So see, I must have put a number in wrong. So let me go back and look at my matrix. So let me go edit and enter. So I got a 3 by 4. Oh, I see what I did. Look, I had 3 by 4. Those were 180. But right here should have been a negative 3. So that's a negative 3, and then a 1 and an 8. Yep. And then down here was negative 1, 0, 1. Okay, so now I'm good. But see, one sign made me miss this, okay? So second matrix, go back and get that RREF again. But what I like is when you do make a mistake, you can look at it real quick and all you got to do is fix the mistake and then hit it again and enter. And y'all, there you go. 27, 89, and 64. So if you get wild numbers like I did on my first one, don't get discouraged. Go back and look at it. And all I did was, I guess I didn't hit that negative 3 good enough, and it just put a positive 3 in there, okay? All right, y'all. So I think this one wants to answers A we said was 27, B was 89, and then C was 64. All right, y'all. So this is another word problem. The sum of three numbers is 54. So X plus Y plus Z equals 54. Now remember, on this one, I put my largest row first and then my smallest row last. So the B's or the Y will be my middle number, okay? So I'm going to do large, middle, small. So the difference of the largest and the smallest, so that'll be X minus Z equals 44. And then the sum of the two smaller numbers will be Y plus Z equaled 14. Okay, so once again, this one, I got row 1, 2, and 3. Notice this one's missing a Y here and an X here. So if I eliminate the Y or the X's, the other one can be what's left, okay? Now you could do the Z's also. Those wouldn't be that bad, but you would have to add rows twice. So watch what I'm talking about here. I'm going to eliminate the X's again. So if I'm going to eliminate the X, I'm going to multiply the second row by negative 1. So y'all, my first row, I'm going to add 1 and 2 after changing 2. So 1 will stay the same. X plus Y plus Z equals 54. If I change 2 by multiplying, that'll make a negative X. Negative times negative make a positive Z. And then negative times 44 is a negative 44. So look here. The X's cancel. I got 1Y plus Z and Z is 2Z. And then 54 and negative 44 is a positive 10. Now notice, all you got in equation 3 is Y's and Z's, so that can become the second equation. So I got Y plus 2Z equals 10, and then Y plus Z equals 14. I'm going to eliminate the Y by multiplying this row by negative 1. So the first one will stay Y plus 2Z equals 10. This gives me a negative Y, negative Z equals negative 14. Y'all watch this one. The Y's cancel. 2 minus 1 left you 1Z. 10 minus 14 is -4. So I know what the z equals. So let's plug it right here and get the y. So we're going to back substitute. I'm going to use this one. Y plus z, which is -4, equals 14. I can add 4 to both sides, and I get y equals 18. So the z is -4. The y is 18. So I can add all 3 of them, and they got to equal 54. So I'm going to back substitute for the last time. X plus y, which is 18, and z, which is -4. All 3 of them got to equal 54. All right, y'all. So 18 minus 4 is 14. And y'all, to finish this out, I'm going to subtract 14 from both sides. And 54 minus 14, what's that? Oh, that looks like 40. So 40 plus 18 is 58, minus 4 equals 54. 40 minus a -4 would be like 40 plus 4 gives me 44, and so on, okay? But all these answers will make all 3 of them equations true. So y'all, let me see if I can actually get it on the calculator right this time. So let me clear everything off. Second, x -1, go to edit and enter. 3 by 4. So you had 11154. So the sum of my 3 numbers was 54. Then I had a 1 for the x, 0 for the y, -1 for the z. That equaled 44. Then I had a 0 for the x, 1 for the y, 1 for the z, and that one equaled 14. Enter. All right, I think I'm good on this one. So second quit. I'm going to go get RREF by hitting second, x -1, arrow to math, and then arrow down to B. So there's A, B is RREF, enter. And then second, x -1, and enter for the matrix. All right, y'all. So hopefully we get a 40, 18, and a -4. All right, y'all, so we're happy on this one, so we would go punch that in. So it wants the numbers from largest to smallest, and that's the order where I actually did them. 40, 18, and then my -4. All right, y'all, then we hit next. All right, so this one just wants you to graph and um, remember, there's going to be a 2-point line tool. So y'all, let me ask y'all first. You see I got a solid line by default, and then you got a dash line. So on this graph, would I use a solid or dashed line since it is a greater than? Oh, Justin, that's pretty quick. You want a dash for sure, okay? So click that dash, y'all. So remember, greater than and less than, you got to use a dash line. Now I'm just going to pick 2 points to put in there. So let me put a 0 in for the x. If I put a 0 in for the x, 0 minus 2 gives me a -2 for the y. So I'm going to 0 and -2. Now let me put a 1 in for the x. If I put a 1 in for the x, 1 minus 2 gives me a -1. So I would be at 1, -1. So there's the dash line. Let me ask y'all this. Since it's greater than, would I shade it above the line or below the line? Above the line. So y'all remember, grab the paint can, come over here above the line, and click enter. Oh, you also notice it's now painting above the line. Save that and hit next. So remember, greater than, less than, dash lines. Greater than shades above, less than shades below. If it was greater than or equal, less than or equal, you would have used a solid line, okay? All right, y'all. So now this one, you actually either got to graph it on the calculator or graph it by hand, okay? So we got to see if this is going to equal A, B, C, or D. So y is greater than or equal to x plus 6. Y is less than or equal 3 minus x. So you sort of got to come in here and maybe do a little bit of graphing on this one real quick. Just to see what kind of um, graph you're going to get, because these are going to intersect, remember, and I'm looking for the section where it double shades. So let me do this one first, x plus 6, and then I'll graph the y equals less than or equal 3 minus x. All right, so I'm just going to use zeros and ones on all of these x's, okay? So if I put a 0 in here, 0 plus 6 is 6. If I put a 1 in here, 1 plus 6 is 7. So I'm just going to make this out about 7. Oh, yeah, also 0, 6, 0, up 6, and then it was 1, 7, 1, up 7. So it's a solid line. So this solid line on the first one is greater than or equal. When I shade this above or below. So it's going to shade above. So you're coming in here and you're shading this whole graph above the line, okay? Alrighty. So let's work on this one. We got 3 minus x. So if you put a 0 in there, 3 minus 0 is 3. If you put a 1 in there, 3 minus 1 is 2. So my second line is 0, 3. So 0 up 3. And then 1 up 2. Oh, y'all, so that line seems to be coming like that. So the second line, are you going to shade it above or below? So Jesselyn, good job. That one's got less than, so it's going to be below that line. So you're shading like this. So y'all, the actual answer is this double shaded where I got the green and the orange shading in here. This little triangle pointing to the left here, okay? So on our math lab, let's see, the one shaded to the left. Y'all, what am I looking for here? Yep, there you go. So if I make that bigger, you can see it's shaded to the left. I think like 95% of these are the one that's shaded to the left on them. Every one I've ever done has been shaded to the left because above that line and below that one. So I don't know. We'll just have to see. All right, y'all, that looks like it. So then I would what? Submit that and be done. All right, y'all. So questions on that? So, like I said, do your review quiz as many times as you got to get a good grade on it. Because that's going to be what you want to do before you do the test. You can do that review quiz as many times as you want, and it'll keep the highest grade for the quiz, okay? Now, the quiz and the test are similar. They just change the numbers up. So then you'll be ready for the test, and y'all can knock that out. Um, the test is not due till Sunday night, okay? Now, tomorrow we will start test two material, okay? So if you want to do the test tonight and get it out of the way, you can. Then you can start on your test two stuff with me tomorrow. Um, and Monty, the test is due Sunday night at midnight. So I usually give y'all the whole week to work on it because I got a lot of people that work a lot through the week, so they like to work on the weekends. So I usually make everything due on Sunday nights, okay? Alrighty, y'all. So let me stop my video here.